My name is Shahir and I'll be presenting to you my project Al-Rahla. And Rahla is a word in Arabic that means the journey. In this case, we'll be taking a journey through Manshiyat Nasr, also known as Garbage City in Cairo. Just to present to you a very brief abstract of the project looks at Manshiyat Nasr, a neighborhood of Cairo, or as it's more popularly known as Garbage City, from the perspective of its pigeon inhabitants and their close relationships with the area's pigeon fanciers, taking seriously how pigeons sees the world and reconfiguring forms of architectural representation accordingly. This project reveals new readings of Manshiyat Nasr beyond anthropocentric scales, materialities, and value systems. The project was explored through playlists, and this project was explored through sonics and more specifically, the project looked at a local Egyptian band, Kairouki. The band sparked during the Egyptian Revolution due to their music, references to the Egyptian government and social inequalities. The music highlighted freedom and basic social rights. Most Egyptians related to their music, and the music became almost a sonic digital archive of the Egyptian Revolution that's alive until this day. The project was also explored through a personally put together and edited film, which highlighted the living conditions as well as the challenges faced by the Garbage City inhabitants. The film also highlighted the ingenious ways this community has found flight. Garbage City is known for the tall wooden structures that pigeons fanciers have built on its rooftops. Keeping pigeons allows the community to escape from the country's political turmoil. As we can see in this film, it captures the daily basis and the lifestyle of this community and locals and how they live, eat, and work among garbage on a daily basis. The site was also explored through a series of analysis drawings of found objects and artifacts on site. The artifacts start to communicate the sense of place and character of the site. By manipulating and exaggerating the scale of the objects, we start to shift our perspective and understanding of the site versus its current condition. Al-Rahla, a ground-to-air survey. First, the project explored the series of perspectives from the human perspective and was compared from the pigeon's perspective. In this very first perspective, the urban landscape as could be seen from the human's perspective as clusters of fragile and destroyed homes among garbage. However, in the second perspective, as we take a closer look, the pigeon fanciers are the only remarkable elements of interest and landmarks for the inhabitants of Manshiyat Nasr. They become the only source of interest and element of interest in this landscape, and it's a way to escape this garbage environment. As mentioned in the previous perspective, as we take a closer look at this landmarks or fanciers, the pigeon fanciers at a closer perspective are considered as places of refuge to connect to the sky and escape from the groundness among garbage for local. As we can see here in this perspective, the garbage is almost taking every spot that could be occupied or could be inhabited by humans and become a part of their daily lives. In this perspective, Al-Rahla 0.4, human-pigeon relations are taken seriously, and communications between both is established through a call and response. In this perspective here, we see a local awaiting the arrival of the pigeon to their home and patiently connecting to the sky, waiting for a group of pigeons to arrive and inhabit their little boxes. In this last perspective, the pigeon owner comes to a close relationship with the pigeon homes and their refuge, patiently waiting for the close contact between their hands, as we can see here in this perspective, and the pigeon upon its arrival. So same perspectives or the journey is now seen from the bird's perspective. In this case, we'll be looking at Manshiyat Nasr from the same angles, but in this case, we try to move out from the human perspective and see that context from a totally different vision. And that was developed through multiple iterations. The first iteration was seeing that perspective, but it was still seen from a literal structural perspective as the human would see space. During the initial iteration, the project explored the bird's perspective towards physical spaces and how it could be attracted to certain physical spaces in relation to materiality and spatial choreography. towards iteration 2. In this iteration, the project stepped out from the human's lens and started to see spaces and explore these spaces scientifically further from a pigeon perspective. What colors do birds see in space? And that was kind of the first step towards initial and major steps to take the bird's eye perspective very seriously and its perception of space. In this case, that was to see the intangible elements that birds start to see in space. It's not all about the structures, or it wasn't all about the physical spaces as the human would see it, but the bird, there's far way more important elements and intangible fields that they would sense and feel in space. And that was explored through research and articles where some articles start to prove that a pigeon can actually understand distance and time, and they navigate their way home through using quantum mechanics to navigate space. And most surprisingly, birds can see Earth magnetic fields. So these elements all become spatial that we as humans don't see, but for a bird, these are primary spaces for navigation. And how we can start to see Manshiyat Nasr or Garbage City from that perspective. And that was explored through multiple distances and what bird sees and senses at each distance until its arrival home. In this very first perspective, it starts to allow us to see the opportunity and reveal the hidden qualities underneath the spaces of Garbage City. The bird's beak becomes almost a biological compass that senses magnetic fields to find its way home. Through using its beak, magnetic fields become unseen magical primary spaces and spatial fields for the bird to navigate its way home. As we can see here, the beak, as mentioned, becomes this compass for a bird to start to sense these magnetic fields and attract its way home and guide it to its way home. Through these close-ups, the landmark becomes almost a magnet that attracts these magnetic fields, and the bird starts to follow these flows and movement in space to find its way home. Garbage is no longer seen as garbage from the bird's perspective, but as an abstract urban topography that start to blend and take over the surrounding buildings. The urban noises and sonics of the city become advantage and opportunities for the bird to find its way home. The city, as represented in metallic gold, suggests that it is one of a kind place that cannot be reproduced or replaced. As we can see here, this garbage is no longer seen as physical garbage, but as abstract topographies that take over the city, and these sound fields become a way of navigation and fields to occupy in space that we as humans we do not see. الرحلة 0.3. The calls produced from the fanciers are visualized as sound fields. Smells emerging from the garbage could be seen as pixels in the background fading into space. All of these intangible elements and unseen realities are considered primary elements both for the bird's navigation and for a way to occupy space. From the perspective, the city is constructed through new scales, revealing new spatial possibilities. In this case, we see that the human is no longer a primary element of focus, but it becomes an artifact among these landscapes. The walls, the broken walls, the stairs are no longer seen as relics or leftover objects, but they all come together to form this kind of typology of space for a bird. In this last perspective, the perspective highlights the bird's arrival to its home. Through identifying smells, sound, and landmarks, the bird comes to a close interaction with its owner. The tangible and intangible spatial layers suggested by Garbage City reveal many spatial opportunities for birds. The shifted perspective allows us to see the bright side of Manshiyat Nasr through its hidden layers and the bird's narrative. Someone else's garbage could be someone else's treasure. Garbage City is an irreplaceable treasure for local pigeons. And finally, I wanted to end with almost same views and perspectives, but looking at them from different point of views. In this case, that was human perspective, and that case was the bird's or the pigeon perspective. Putting these side by side allow us to just slow down and think how we can shift our perspective of space and see the opportunities and hidden layers of each space when we look at these from a different vision. Uh, Thank you so much, and I'd love to hear your comments.